Time to light the match for the burning truth with Casey Hendrickson.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you for tuning into The Burning Truth. I am your host, Casey Hendrickson. Do want to thank R&B Car Company, locations in South Bend, Warsaw, and Fort Wayne. Go to rbcarcompany.com. All right. Live stream's up and running. A lot of you were kind of concerned that I wouldn't be able to get it up and running if I was in Fort Wayne. Well, luckily I have a little stash of old webcams. So I'm using an old webcam today that I haven't used in quite some time, and luckily I grabbed the one that worked. So live stream is up and running on Rumble. Go to rumble.com/Casey the host. Watch the live stream, hang out with the live chat over there. Okay. Wow, where do I start? I honestly don't know where to start. I guess we're going to give you just some minor updates. How about that? We'll give you some minor updates on just stuff that's kind of happening, and I think we have to get into the Joe Biden garbage comment. The first thing that we have is a major victory this afternoon from the United States Supreme Court. In a pivotal 6-3 decision, the Supreme Court has overruled a federal judge that was blocking Virginia from removing 1,600 possible ineligible voters, including many illegal aliens, from its rolls. Now, you need to remember something. And yes, the Attorney General of Indiana, Todd Rokita, who has this battle himself, along with his ally, Secretary of State Diego Morales in Indiana. He's going to be joining us a little bit later on this afternoon. And this is 1,600 people who self-identified as not being U.S. citizens. So, because they self-identified as not being U.S. citizens, Virginia, which has had a law in the books since 2006 to remove them, removed them. Now, it is illegal, as leftists will love to point out to you, the news media loves to point out to you, it is illegal for you to vote in a federal election if you are not a U.S. citizen. However, there is no requirement to provide proof that you are a U.S. citizen when you register. See the rub? Interesting, right? I mean, it's a different word other than interesting, but for the sake of FCC stuff, there's already a fake lie about an FCC complaint about me out there. I don't want to get a real one. So, you do not have to prove that you're a U.S. citizen to register to vote in a federal election. In fact, it's against the law for you to require it. Many states have tried, most famously Arizona, Prop 200. They were sued into oblivion. And many other states have tried to do the same thing, also sued into oblivion. I think there's the 3 states that will split your ballot, state, federal, and you have to provide identity. You have to provide proof of U.S. citizenship in order to vote in the state, but you don't have to provide any proof in order to vote for federal. That is the state of our elections right now. And anytime you get in a discussion, anytime you get in a debate with anybody else, it doesn't matter who they are, it doesn't matter relatives, coworkers, neighbors, just some dweeb knocking on your door, pollster calling you up, whatever it is. And just ask them, does it make any sense that the United States of America, which makes very clear that it is illegal for a non-citizen to vote in federal elections, because some states do allow non-citizens to vote in local elections. When it comes to federal elections, it is illegal for you to vote if you're not a U.S. citizen. Does it make any sense that the United States, which bans non-citizens from voting in federal elections, does not require them to prove that citizenship when they register? And why do Democrats continue to oppose those efforts? Here's the argument. There is only one. The argument is this. Somewhere between 7 and 10% of the American population doesn't have access to proof of their citizenship, according to the Brennan Center for Justice. Very left-wing, liberal think tank. They're allied with the League of Women Voters. And they are the main impetus for the legal challenges to requirements to prove citizenship to register to vote. Now, that is the case because of a couple of things. One, older Americans are less likely to have their birth certificate. It is more difficult to get their birth certificate from states because it's not digitized, it's paper. They got to go to the archives. They got to go through it by hand. Nobody wants to do that. I'm currently in the midst of a case involving old documents in the state of California. The state of California is awful at this. And I'm only in my 40s. So it is not an easy thing to do for some people. Now, do I think that there could be a mechanism to address the 7 to 10% of the population that may have this problem? Absolutely. I'm all for that. But we still have the overwhelming majority of people out there who do have access to it, can easily get it, certainly can get it within the 2-year mark for the next election. And they're not. Now, this is where the old-fashioned Casey just kind of comes in. It's like, okay, if you're not that invested in getting your documents to prove your U.S. citizenship, I guess you're not all that invested in voting then, are you? If you won't even get the paperwork that is required for you to be able to register, you certainly aren't going to do the research in the election. You're not going to give an informed vote, that's for sure. And if you don't want to put in the effort to be able to vote, then, well, you don't get to vote. Not that hard. That's just my opinion. People disagree with that. They claim it's because of the lack of access to those documents. That's nonsense. Let's not forget the Real ID Act is still, while delayed, still technically supposed to be in force. And that was an argument with the Real ID Act. But what about older Americans who might find it a little bit difficult to get that paperwork? Well, accommodations are supposed to have been made, only they keep delaying it. So if we're supposed to have this National Real ID Act, which is supposed to solve this entire issue, why don't we just repeal the Real ID Act and not allow every state to do it? Why is it still on the books? Why do we keep moving forward with the Real ID Act? You mean to tell me that we can't incrementally do this? We can instantaneously do it for over 90% of the country, but we can't incrementally do it for everybody else who might be, I don't know, over the age of 90 or something like that. And now the Brennan Center will tell you that it's a lot of poor people who don't have that paperwork. That doesn't appear to pass the smell test when you actually dive into the numbers. It's another example of, hey, poor black people don't know how to get their ID, which is a horrendously racist thing for somebody to say. Now, let me ask you a question. Remember, everything that liberals believe, they hold a contradictory belief. If poor black people are not capable of getting an identification, and somehow, some way, they're still able to function in our society, which is, again, a horrendously racist and untrue thing to say about black people in this country. If you're going to sit there and you're going to make that claim, actually, I'm running low on time, so I'll probably have to do this on the other end of this thing, because I got to give you an update on this situation here. But okay, so I don't want to go too long. I'm trying to do better on my clocks. Okay, so forgive me, cliffhanger. Good news is Virginia can kick these 1,600 people off of the registration. These are the people who still, again, self-identified as not a U.S. citizen. Now, if there's a mistake, if they screwed up when they self-identified, the good news is on election day, they can show up in Virginia and they have same-day registration and they can fix the problem. So Glenn Youngkin got a victory there. I'll continue the other bit and we'll get into what's happening in Colorado and Florida and everywhere else. Dearborn, oh my gosh, Dearborn, Michigan that's an interesting one today. Holy moly. We got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth. So anyway, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted with people trying to pay bills and whatnot, Casey Hendrickson here on The Burning Truth. If poor black Americans can't get an ID, which has been the left-wing argument for an extended number of years in the United States, which is, again, nonsense, very racist thing for liberals to say, but nonetheless, that's the argument that they make. Poor black Americans other poor non-white people too. Like they can't. Poor white people totally know where to go, know how to get it. It's everybody else who's incapable of getting an ID, which again is nonsense. But that's the argument that the Democratic Party makes. If that's the case, if it is super, super difficult for poor minorities in the United States to get an ID, then how is it possible to secure our elections by making the argument that state IDs provide that proof of citizenship that will secure the election and prevent non-citizens from voting? You catch what I'm saying there? It's a complicated issue, sort of, but not really. So if you have, sorry, my medication didn't really quite kick in the way that it should today because I'm dehydrated. But if you are out there telling people that non-citizens won't be registering to vote illegally because the state ID requirements will prevent them from doing so, because the state ID requirements are very, very stringent, whether they're real ID or not, and therefore a non-citizen can't register to vote in order to cast an illegal ballot in our elections. That is the argument that leftists have been making over the past several years and the past several months with the SAVE Act and everything else. So they're telling you that the state ID system is so sound and so robust that it cannot be scammed, it cannot be defrauded, it is ironclad, no non-citizen can register to vote because of the state ID system, while simultaneously telling you that poor minority Americans are incapable of getting the state ID system. Like I said, doesn't make a lot of sense. Makes your brain hurt a little bit when you talk about it. But that's the argument. That is the pitch that they are making. So the Supreme Court has told Virginia, you do not have to put these 1,600 ineligible voters back on the rolls. If they are, in fact, legal citizens, they can register the same day at the election, provide proper identification, and can cast a ballot and vote just like they should. Now, again, same-day voter registration leads to massive fraud. There's a reason it's banned almost everywhere in the world. Then you've got the Colorado Secretary of State. The Colorado Secretary of State is Jenna Griswold. We've had some fun with Jenna Griswold over the years. She's not an intelligent person. Now, I'm going to put the caveat out there. There's a very good chance her not being a very bright person is the reason that this happened. She decided that she was going to publish, okay, the passwords for the election machines in a public spreadsheet. What do the passwords for the election machines do? Allow you to break in and hack into the machine and change votes and stuff like that, steal election. So she did that. So last month, she sent 30,000 mailers to illegal immigrants inviting them to register to vote because, again, Colorado. This is, like I said, she's not a very bright person. So now she, quote, accidentally leaked passwords to Dominion voting machines that have now been online for several months. And this is all according to NBC 9 News. Now, if you think that's a little crazy, well, I mean, you would be right. That's frankly a little nuts. Did you also happen to see what was happening with the Secretary of State of Michigan? Did you happen to catch that one? Because the Secretary of State of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, who very well could be the next governor of Michigan, by the way, she has pointed out that, well, we have a massive issue with Dominion voting machines, specifically the Dominion voting machines for people with disabilities. You see, it turns out that if you go in, if you're a person with disabilities and you go in to vote with one of these specialized machines, okay, which is supposed to help somebody with disabilities cast their vote, it's just a little bit more helpful for them, and you want to not vote down ballot, but you want to mix your votes. So you want to vote for a mixture of Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and Libertarians, whatever you're trying to do. The machine will have an error and will have a glitch. And according to the Secretary of State of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson, this is a nationwide problem with this particular machine. Great. So I don't know how they fix that. I'm not exactly sure. So again, this is what is it? Daily Fetch. Jason Walsh. Daily Fetch pulls articles from elsewhere. I don't know where the original article published. My apologies, but WLNS also has it. Split ticket voters using a Dominion ICX voter assist terminal on Election Day should be prepared for straight ticket, split ticket programming issues when marking their ballot, according to the Michigan Secretary of State, Jocelyn Benson, who says, quote, it's an issue all over the country. Great. So you got the Secretary of State of Colorado publishing the passwords to hack into the Dominion machines. You've got the Secretary of State of Michigan telling you that the Dominion machines, which use the disability assist option, the VAT system, is, well, it's glitchy. So now what happens with people who are there on Election Day with disabilities? Do they get to cast a ballot or not? How does that work? A Florida election worker has now been fired after completed ballots were found by the roadside. Just threw them away. Dumped them. Oh, okay. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Republicans are probably going to win North Carolina because Kamala Harris has surrendered. Excuse me. She has pulled all of her advertising in North Carolina. I told you she'd win North Carolina. Nearly a $2 million planned ad spend has now been withdrawn and stopped. She's given up North Carolina. Republicans are winning in a lot of states in early voting. That never happens. Then you have the latest scandal. It's not just a Joe Biden scandal, though, because Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, once again, pardon the pun, fumbled it. Got more coming up. You're tuned in to The Burning Truth.
The Burning Truth with Casey Hendrickson.
And good afternoon. Thank you for tuning in to The Burning Truth. I'm your host, Casey Hendrickson. Yes, I'm in the fort today. I'm in Fort Wayne. Made the trip up here today because the Attorney General, Todd Rokita, is going to be in the area. And Todd Rokita asked if we could do the interview in person instead of doing a call-in. He wanted to come on out to the WOWO studio. So he will be here a little bit later on in the program. And yes, we're going to talk about the election registration issue with the nearly 600,000 people who registered in Indiana without an ID. And really, they're just asking the federal government to confirm whether or not they're legally allowed to vote. Very simple stuff. Not that difficult. So we left off where Kamala Harris has surrendered North Carolina. So she had a nearly $2 million ad buy planned. And, of course, she gave her closing arguments 5 days early. I don't get it either, folks. I don't understand. I don't know why, but she did. And she has now surrendered North Carolina. Not at all real surprised about this. And I told you that I expected North Carolina to go to Trump. Officials in North Carolina expected Trump to win North Carolina fairly easy. However, as of right now, if you go to 270towin.com, based on the current polling, they've got North Carolina as a toss-up. I don't know that I agree with that. So we got Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia as toss-up. So I think you just throw North Carolina in the red map there, and that's 226 to 235 Trump, with 77 undecideds at this point. And they've got, some states that they think could flip. New Mexico could flip. They're saying that Minnesota could flip. I don't think so. Maine, New Hampshire, and Virginia could potentially flip red. But they also have Texas and Florida as potentially flipping red, too. They also have Iowa and Ohio as flipping blue. Iowa and Ohio potentially flipping blue as well. Not going to happen, okay? So I don't, you can play with it yourself. If you want to go ahead and take a look at the polls, you want to go over it, you can go ahead and go to 270 to win. That's the number 270. You can play with the electoral votes. It's actually kind of fun to sit there and just war game this whole thing out, but pretty interesting. The other thing that I thought was, really kind of damaging for Kamala Harris is, well, yet another paper wouldn't endorse her, but did you see that the mayor of Dearborn Heights has not endorsed Kamala? Oh my. Now, remember, Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn Heights, the mayor got on Trump's support. Dearborn Heights, Dearborn, different. Sorry, my apologies. So Trump was on stage. We're getting ready to go on stage on Noise, 95.3 MNCR affiliate there in the South Bend area. And we've got Rob Schmidt from Newsmax with us. And right before we walk out, he goes, holy smokes, Trump just got a bunch of Muslim imams on stage to endorse him in Michigan. Huge. Could be a big deal. And the Dearborn Heights mayor, he went out there and he endorsed him too. But then the mayor of Dearborn is opting not to endorse Kamala. Oh my. Mayor Abdullah Hammoud, a Democrat who leads Dearborn, Michigan, has declined to endorse Harris ahead of the election. The son of Lebanese immigrants who became Dearborn's first Arab American mayor in 2022. He cited dissatisfaction with the Democratic Party's stance on Middle Eastern policy and mourned the loss of family members in war-torn areas of Lebanon, as he announced Friday that he would not be backing either Harris or Trump, saying that he had not found any candidate, especially the candidate with the party I've affiliated myself with, who has been willing to depart from the current course that former Vice President Biden has taken us down in the Middle East. He urged people to vote your moral conscience in comments to thehill.com. And that is a big deal. Very, very big deal. Now, if you look, if you look at the latest YouGov survey, which I'm not sure I buy, but if you look at the latest YouGov survey, Donald Trump has a 2-point lead over Harris with Arab Americans. Democrats are beside themselves over this. They do not understand how in the world that is possible. They're not comprehending it at all. How is it that the party of being pro-Israel, which of course is the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party for you Jewish voters out there, how is it that they're getting the Muslim vote as well? First of all, I think it's actually pretty interesting to even have the Democrats saying that. Hey, how is it that you can have the party of Israel still get endorsed by the Muslims? I don't know. Are you suggesting that Muslims and Jewish people can't endorse the same people and be on the same side? It's kind of weird. That's kind of the opposite of what Democrats have been saying for a number of years, right? If they're not pro-Israel, that doesn't mean that they're not anti-Semitic and that you can be both. Suddenly you can't, I guess. Interesting. But that's kind of what they're saying. So now you start to take a look at everything else that's going on. You got the GOP, Indiana included, are now going on offense, trying to find non-citizens on the voter rolls. 3 states led by Republicans have gone on the offensive against the Biden administration by suing the Department of Homeland Security over access to information to verify the citizenship status of registered voters. So far. Now, this is also important for Indiana. So far, the Biden-Harris White House is stonewalling the efforts at maintaining voter integrity. While the Biden administration is suing states and towns across the country in an effort to thwart election integrity measures ahead of the election, the states of Ohio, Florida, and Texas are going on offense by suing the DHS in an effort to gain access to a database to identify non-citizens on voter rolls. Well. So to the crazy person online the other day that I had to roll up a figurative piece of newspaper and swat across the nose, who was on Attorney General Todd Rokita's X thread claiming that you had to have a social security number to register in Indiana, which of course you do not. How do you explain the federal government refusing to help multiple states? Indiana is just the latest to ask for that assistance. How do you explain the Biden-Harris administration's refusal to help those states verify the citizenship status of people who did not provide proof of citizenship? Because they're stonewalling those efforts and they're refusing to help. Meanwhile, they're filing lawsuits against several other states. So I guess they didn't they go after Ohio? They also went after Alabama. They went after Virginia. Ohio, Florida, and Texas are maintaining their own voter rolls. And again, the DHS has not been real happy with that. The Ohio Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, he sued the DHS last Thursday, alleging that the agency is stonewalling his efforts to find and remove non-citizens from the state's voter rolls. Now remember, Diego Morales, Secretary of State of Indiana, Attorney General Todd Rokita have asked the federal government to do the same. So my assumption is the federal government won't help Indiana and will probably move forward with a lawsuit because the federal government's not helping here. So they are doing everything that they can to get you out of line, to not cast your ballot, to come back. And if you're disabled, you're probably not going to be able to cast your ballot unless you vote down ballot. If you try to split your ticket, I guess you're out of luck there. I don't know if the Democrats feel like that helps them or not. I guess it depends on the area. But the Dominion machines are all jacked up, according to Jocelyn Benson, the Secretary of State of Michigan, a Democrat, really liberal one, by the way. So the last 5 days is turning out to be a bit gritty and a bit ugly, as we expected. But all of these little stories, all of these tiny little things, they add up to one big thing if Donald Trump wins. And that is the news media going, hey, in the weeks leading up to the election, we had 30 stories about election problems that we were trying to warn everybody about. We don't think that Trump won this thing. And just like that, all of these previous years, all of these past 8 to 9 years, going to vanish, going to disappear, and they're going to tell you that elections can be stolen. And your response to that will be, there is no evidence of widespread voter fraud. That will be your answer because that's what they say for everything else. All right, so we got to get to the garbage people comment. Bunch of sound bites to play for you coming up. You're listening to The Burning Truth. The song is called Cradles. It's where Joe Biden needs to go. He needs to go back in the cradle. All right, cue the audio. This is what Joe Biden said that got everybody all bent out of shape and in trouble.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable. And it's un-American.
Yeah, it's un-American. Okay, so friendly reminder that Puerto Rico has one of the most corrupt governments in any U.S. territory. It is actually one of the reasons why liberals on Puerto Rico did not want statehood for so long. They only wanted statehood after a massive hurricane wrecked them. They didn't want statehood because they are able pretty much to get away with whatever they do there, and it is an extremely corrupt place. There's also, there's some, we'll call it banter between various nationalities, and Puerto Ricans don't get along with some, and others don't get along with Puerto Ricans, and things like that kind of happen and blow up anyway. At the end of the day, it was, Tony Hinchcliffe cracked a joke. It was a funny joke, actually. It's a really good one. And if you are a person who has a sense of humor, you know who he is, or you watch his show, Kill Tony, you will know that was pretty darn funny. It was a good joke. Now, some are saying that, all right, it's probably not the best joke for a Trump rally or what have you. He cracked a couple of other racial jokes. He had friends there that were mixed races and things like that. He used them as props in his jokes and everything. And it was it was frankly pretty darn good. It was a good set. If you like good comedy and you like offensive comedy, then that was a great set. And you probably had a really good time with it. Now, if you're butthurt and unfunny and unlovable, yeah, you probably didn't like it all that much. So, here's something that's kind of interesting. If you sit here and you listen to Joe Biden say what he said, he called all of Trump's supporters garbage, and then they tried to back off of it and pretend that that did not happen. But it did happen. So now we're sitting here once again looking at the White House. The White House once again changed the official transcript of what Joe Biden said, and they're trying to clean it up. I wonder why they're doing that. Joe Biden then tries to post. Well, of course, he didn't post. You know, if it's Karine Jean-Pierre or somebody else, I don't know. Earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump's supporter at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it. His demonization of Latinos is unconscionable. That's all I meant to say. The comments at that rally don't reflect who we are as a nation. Yeah. So J.D. Vance posts, the only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. That's a direct quote. That's what Kamala Harris's boss said. This is how Politico decided to report it. Biden, in a Zoom call with the organization Voto Latino, said the only garbage was the hatred of Trump supporters who said such things about American citizens. That's not at all what happened. So they're changing everything that they can in order to lie about this. Well, you know, Kamala Harris was asked about it, and here's the reality. All right, Joe Biden once again screwed up. Remember, Joe Biden went out there and said, hey, we need to lock him up. And then he paused and went, uh-oh, I shouldn't have said that. So maybe I need to, back that off. And he goes, politically. Yeah, okay. Now, keep in mind that this happened. This whole Puerto Rico joke happened at the same time at a Tim Walz rally where George Lopez, another comedian, a comedian who steals jokes, much less funny than Tony Hinchcliffe, but George Lopez made a joke about Mexicans being thieves. And that happened at a Tim Walz rally. I don't see any liberals going out there and getting upset at George Lopez making jokes about Mexicans stealing stuff at a Tim Walz rally. So Kamala Harris was asked a pretty simple question. He's like, hey, your boss called Trump supporters garbage. So, like, what do you think of that?
Biden put this comment last night about garbage.
Listen, I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments. But let me be clear. I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for.
Oh, really? Didn't you just spend the last several days calling Trump supporters Nazis? Didn't Tim Walz spend the last couple of days calling Trump supporters Nazis? Didn't CNN just call Trump supporters Nazis again? Yes, they did. And a guy called him on it and he got fired, remember? With a hysterical, perfectly timed beeper joke, by the way. So, yeah, there's more sound bites on this. We've got to listen to him because Tim Walz made it way worse because it's, well, Tim Walz. More coming up.
Podcasts by Federated Media.